I'm a Jamaican with deep roots from the motherland of West Africa. Jamaicans are closely knitted to their ancestry and their ancestors, and Africa was a big part of the Jamaican existence because we were involved in what is known as the triangular trade, where slaves were taken from Africa to the New World, and Jamaica was a big part of that. So that's how I identify. I came from Montego Bay, Jamaica, flew into JFK in August of 1990. My mode of transportation was traveling by flying. I flew Air Jamaica to New York. Yes, I came alone. I came here to go to school. After I graduated high school, I took a year sabbatical and studied computers because computer was a new thing back then. And then after I did a year of computer studies, I got into a school in Boston, Massachusetts. So I came to the U.S. to go to school, to go to college. The first one in my family to go to college, I might add. So that was a big deal. I came to New York City because New York City was mentioned in a lot of Jamaican reggae songs, and we always hear about growing up in Jamaica. We always hear about the city that never sleeps, which is New York City. And I had a lot of friends who came to to New York from my high school, and I also had family that lived in New York that I wanted to visit. Well, religion, a big part of the country is Catholic, but I'm a Christian. I'm from a apostolic faith, and also we have deep roots with Rastafarianism, based on the way they eat, mostly vegetables, fish. A lot of the stuff is from the earth. A lot of herbs, music. We delve into something called calypso, which is a traditional music that was used during the slave revolt. Also reggae, which is a big part of the Jamaican culture, based on Bob Marley, which a lot of people know and is familiar with. Reggae music is the heartbeat of a people, and that's how we believe. We believe that in Jamaica, the feeling of love is so strong that you can feel it in your heart. That's why we always go by one love, and Jamaica no problem, because we find ourselves in situations where no matter how deep the adverse adversity is, we as Jamaican we feel like we can weather the storm. As Jamaican, we feel like we can weather the storm in the eye of adversity. Traditionally, we have our national dish that's called ackee and saltfish, and that's something that derived from the slaves because they it was known as a cornerstone of the Jamaican people. The ackee is a vegetable that grows on a tree, like a fruit actually, and the saltfish is the codfish that you know because it would last so long it wouldn't go bad. The slaves could use it over and over a long period of time without the use of refrigerators because that was really not prevalent in those times. It wasn't available to our ancestors. Story base has to do with our ancestors, the slaves, the Maroons, how they fought for our independence. That's a big part of the Jamaican culture to verbally pass it on from generation to generation to let the younger generation know how we gained our independence in 1962. Tradition, family is very important. First and foremost, we believe in the strength of family and the support of family and the community of family. We also musically, we have the calypso and we have the carnival to commemorate our independence and our ancestors. So that's a big part of our culture. Reggae music is a big part of our culture because kind of put Jamaica on the map, so to speak, based on its popularity in Europe and in the United States and all over the world, pretty much. Track and field and cricket is a big part of our culture also. Um, Jamaicans have some of the fastest track and field, as you know. Usain Bolt is pretty famous for being one of the fastest, track and field athlete in the world. He's world renowned for his speed. Cricket is a big thing. Jamaicans, it's a cultural and national sport. Soccer is a national sport. So we're pretty culturally inclined in the sports arena and the music arena also. I miss the white sandy beach, the coconut trees, the farmland, the 88-degree year-round average of sunlight and heat. I mean, I do like the four seasons that we're accustomed to here in the States after living here for so long, but in the Northeast. But I really do like the sea breeze and the sun. It's similar because culturally, there's a lot of Jamaicans here. The great thing about New York City is that it's a melting pot of different cultures. So you have people of all descent, of all different nations that live in this wonderful country of ours, and especially New York City. You go from one neighborhood to the next, and it's a different culture. So that's the thing about Jamaica. Jamaica is not just about Jamaicans. There's a lot of Jews. There's a lot of Indian. There's a Chinatown there. There's Indians, Germans. There's a lot of different cultures that live in Jamaica. So that's a big similarity between Jamaica and New York City. Also, we have access to a lot of the. If I want to play soccer, for example, I can go into a Jamaican neighborhood because we have big Jamaican neighborhoods in all five boroughs. Everywhere you go in the five boroughs of New York, you can find a Jamaican neighborhood. So I can go play soccer if I want. I can go play cricket if I want. I can go play badminton if I want, which are big sports in Jamaica. The reggae music stations are also accessible. So there's a lot of things that we have that are very in common, except for the weather, of course. That we only have that in the summertime. If you live close to the beach, then you go get you go get your swim on. But other than that, there's a lot of differences and there's a lot of similarity. The weather is definitely different. The beach is definitely different because you don't have the white sandy beach, you have mud, and the water is the color is totally different also. So there's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. But I do like the mixed multitude of things that I can find every different neighborhood that I go to. The number one thing was the cold weather. To leave 88-degree weather all year round for 19 years of my life and then come to New York in August and then see the shift from a somewhat sunny August into like freezing where your toes get numb and your fingertips get numb, and even when you're in a heated room you still feel like you're the only one that's cold. It was a big difference. It took a while for me to adjust to that. It was very, very hard at first, but it took a lot of getting used to over the years to have my body get acclimated to the difference in weather. Also, the vegetables are a lot different. The fruits are a lot different because a lot of fruits that we have in Jamaica we don't have here. So it's hard to get a custard apple, a naseberry, a jackfruit. Well, now I see they have jackfruit here, but soursop, all those things, they're not here and you can't really access them as much as you could because where I grew up in Jamaica on a farm, I had access to a lot of different fruits and vegetables. Here it's definitely different. You can't go over to your neighbor's yard and go pick something off the tree. Guineps and tamarinds are two other fruits that is hard to find here in New York. I definitely faced discrimination here because I grew up in a country where I was a majority, not a minority. And when I came to the United States, it was the flip. The flip side. I get to experience the flip side where I was in the minority, and I've actually got into altercations over name calling, and I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. And where when I was younger, I had to handle it a lot differently than I do now that I'm older. I'm a dad, and I have to be responsible. But I've gotten into it, and those things I never experienced in Jamaica because, like I said, I was the majority in terms of numbers. Now, when I got to the States, I was experiencing it from the other end of the spectrum. So racism was definitely big here. It was not as prevalent in Jamaica as it is here, because, like I said, we lived like a family, and whatever race or culture you were, you got treated the same. Even though there was times you could sense there was differences, but here it's very blatant, and it's very in your face, and it's very overt. So that took a while to get used to. Um, well, I tell you one thing. I've learned to handle it a lot differently than the average person would because coming from the Caribbean, coming from the Caribbean and experiencing different aspects according to based on my race, and then coming to the United States and I had to adjust. I realized, certain things that I learned because I went to a high school where it was kind of like an international high school where there was a lot of different races there, but still I was in the majority. My race was a lot more than the Chinese, the Indians, the Jews, the Germans, or the Americans, because Americans came to our school also. So it was a lot different then because everyone lived as one. On my soccer team, there was all different races. You would think it was the United Nations on my soccer team because there was a lot of different races on my soccer team. On my basketball team in Jamaica, same thing. On cricket team, same thing. There was a lot of different races, but once again, we're in the majority, so nothing was in your face. And if something ever presented itself, we would deal with it accordingly because there's a lot of ways you can deal with things without being violent, even though sometimes it might be necessary to be violent in terms of defending yourself. But I found ways to unpack it as I came here, and I dealt with seeing the difference in statistics of how blatantly in your face and how someone could come at you in a different way when it comes to racism. Well, I'll tell you this much. Based on, I feel like my behavior dictate who I am. Um, Whatever I am on the inside is gonna show on the outside in terms of how I behave. So, and your past will always dictate your present and your future. Now, I grew up in a culture where our history was not a mystery. Our history was the foundation of how we were raised. So, in the home, in the church, and in the school, we learn about our history, where we came from, how we got here, and who we are as a people. So, the number one thing as a Jamaican living in New York that I know from myself, and I try to predicate it on my children, is that we need to have knowledge of self, because knowledge of self will always dictate what your behavior is going to be or will be, or the consistency of what your behavior is, so to speak. Your knowledge of self and your knowledge of history and your knowledge of your people and your knowledge of who you are and where you came from will always dictate how you behave when you're in a big crowd in a different country or in a different culture. Um, I would say not. It doesn't really affect, being Jamaican doesn't really affect the way I raise my children, or because like I said, because I have knowledge of self, I teach my children according to bits and pieces of how I was raised and how I was taught by both my parents. So it doesn't really matter what culture a person is. They should not let their surrounding dictate the way they live their life or lead their life, as long as they have principles and they have dignity. They should always stick by their principles and their dignity. So being Jamaican affect me in a positive way of the way I raise my children in this country, because I raise them with knowledge of self and raise them, and for myself also, I know who I am, so I use that knowledge, that wisdom, that understanding to learn how to gravitate around others who are positive and stave off the ones that are negative. And that's pretty much what it is in this world today that we're living in. We have to learn how to differentiate the difference between positivity and negativity, and try to keep a positive outlook on life.